Welcome back to the Ancestral Findings podcast. DNA genealogy is one of the most misunderstood parts of family history research. A lot of people buy a test thinking it will hand them a finished family tree, point to every ancestor they ever had, and carry them back through the centuries with very little effort. That's not how it works. DNA testing can be very useful, but it does not replace research, and it does not magically tell the whole story on its own. What it does do is powerful. It can connect living relatives, confirm whether a family line is heading in the right direction, help solve unknown parentage cases, and open doors that records alone may never open. It can also challenge long-held family stories, raise hard questions, and force people to rethink what they thought they knew. That is part of why DNA testing has become such a major part of genealogy. It gives researchers another kind of evidence, one that comes from biology instead of paper. Still, the excitement around DNA has also created confusion. Many people do not really know what the companies are doing, what the results mean, or how reliable the information is. Some people think the test can see their whole family tree. Some think every company is doing the exact same thing. Some think the test can directly name ancestors from hundreds of years ago with no other work needed. Those ideas all miss what DNA genealogy actually is. At its core, DNA genealogy works by comparing your DNA to the DNA of other people who have tested and agreed to match inside a company's database. When the system finds stretches of DNA that you and another person share, it flags that person as a possible relative. The more DNA you share, the more likely the relationship is to be close. The less DNA you share, the more room there is for different possibilities. That is the heart of the process. Once you understand that, a lot of the mystery starts to clear up. These tests are not reading surnames out of your genes. They are not pulling a full family history out of your saliva. They are comparing your DNA to other living testers and showing where shared inherited segments appear. The genealogy work begins after that. Most of the major genealogy DNA tests rely mainly on autosomal DNA for family matching. Autosomal DNA is the DNA you inherit from both parents across your numbered chromosomes. It is the kind of DNA most useful for finding cousins and other relatives across many branches of your recent family tree. That is important because it explains both the strength and the limit of the test. Autosomal DNA is broad. It covers many lines at once. That makes it useful for matching with cousins from different parts of your family, but it is also mixed together and reshuffled every generation. That means it does not preserve a neat labeled path to every ancestor forever. The company looks at selected points in your DNA and compares them to the same points in other people who have tested with that company. When enough of those markers line up in long enough shared stretches, the company sees that as evidence that the two of you likely inherited DNA from a common ancestor. That is why the main feature on these sites is always the match list. The match list is the center of the test. People sometimes think the company is examining their entire biological identity in some all-knowing way. That is not really what is happening. The company is using a large comparison system. It checks your DNA against the DNA of others in its database, measures shared segments, and then uses statistics to estimate how close those relationships may be. That is why the word match is so important. The test is not just about your DNA by itself. It is about your DNA in comparison to that of other people. When you and another person share DNA, it usually means you both inherited that shared DNA from a common ancestor. That does not automatically tell you exactly who that ancestor was. It does mean there is a biological connection somewhere in the family line. The amount of shared DNA is usually measured in centimorgans, often shortened to cm. This is one of the most important numbers in DNA genealogy. The higher the shared cm, the closer the relationship is likely to be. A parent and child will share a very large amount. Full siblings also share a large amount. First cousins share less. More distant cousins usually share even less, and some may not share enough detectable DNA to show as useful matches at all. This is where people often expect too much precision. They want the numbers to work like a clean chart, where one amount always equals one exact relationship. In real life, it does not work that way. Different relationships can overlap. One amount of shared DNA may fit more than one possible relationship. A person in a certain range might be a second cousin, but they might also fit another family position, depending on the ages, generations, and tree structure involved. That does not mean the system is weak. It means the system is honest. DNA gives a relationship range, not always a single guaranteed label. The rest comes from research. A DNA match is a clue backed by biology. It is strong evidence, but it still has to be interpreted in context. One of the biggest limits in DNA genealogy is not your DNA. It is the database. A company can only compare your DNA to the people who have tested there and agreed to matching. If the relatives you need have not tested with that company, you will not see them there. If the right branch of the family is not in the database, the company cannot create a match that does not exist. That is true no matter how advanced the technology is. This is why two people can test with different companies and get different experiences. Their DNA did not change. The database around their DNA changed. One company may have the cousins they need, another may not. One may have stronger coverage for a certain population or geographic background. Another may feel thin and unhelpful, not because the science failed, but because the right people are simply not there. This also explains why some genealogists test with more than one company when they can. They are not trying to get different DNA. They're trying to get access to different databases and different sets of possible relatives. That is one of the first things beginners need to understand. A DNA test isn't just about what is in you. It is also about who is already in the system waiting to be matched. People often ask whether the major companies are all capturing the same DNA and analyzing the same thing. In one sense, yes, your DNA is still your DNA. That does not change from one company to another. But the experience is not identical across companies, and neither are the tools. The main consumer genealogy companies overlap in broad ways. Most of them use autosomal DNA for relative matching. But they do not all have the same database size, the same users, the same ethnicity reference panels, the same matching tools, or the same way of presenting results. Some may be better for cousin matching in your research area. Some may be stronger for international matches. Some may offer more health-related features. Some may give you better tools for looking at shared matches and relationship possibilities. That is why the question is not always which company is best. The better question is, best for what? If your goal is finding unknown cousins, the strongest company may be the one where the most useful relatives have been tested. If your goal is to study a direct paternal or direct maternal line, then other types of testing may come into the picture. If your interest is partly health-related, that is another direction entirely. The key point is that these companies are not all interchangeable. They are using related methods, but they are not identical in their databases or their tools. That is why one person may swear by one company while another has better luck somewhere else. One of the most important things to understand is that autosomal DNA is strongest for more recent genealogy. It does not carry every ancestral line in a neat and readable way forever. You inherit about half of your autosomal DNA from each parent. They each inherited about half from theirs. But as each generation passes, that DNA is reshuffled. Because of that, you do not carry an equal or clearly usable amount from every ancestor several generations back. Some ancestors leave detectable DNA in you. Others may not leave enough for a consumer genealogy test to capture in a useful way. This is why DNA testing is usually strongest when it helps connect you to living relatives who share a common ancestor in the more recent past. Then you use records and family history research to work back to that shared ancestor. That's a very different idea from what many beginners expect. They think the test itself will directly identify a specific ancestor from 300 or 400 years ago. Usually it will not. What it can do is identify relatives living now who may descend from the same family line. That gives you a research path. It does not hand you the final answer. So, when people ask whether DNA can take them back centuries and centuries, the honest answer is this: not in a clean, direct, standalone way. It is much better at building bridges between living people and documented history than it is at naming distant ancestors by itself. DNA genealogy is at its strongest with close relationships. Parent and child matches are usually very clear. Full siblings, half-siblings, grandparents, grandchildren, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, and many first cousin-level matches are also usually strong enough to be very useful. As relationships get more distant, uncertainty increases. The shared DNA gets smaller. Different relationship types begin to overlap more. Some distant cousins may share enough DNA to be seen, while others may not. Some small matches are real but hard to place. Others may be too small to build much confidence around without supporting evidence. That does not mean distant matches are worthless. Sometimes they are exactly what helps solve a problem, but they usually require more patience and more work. The farther out you go, the more you need records, family trees, shared match patterns, geography, and common sense to help interpret what you're seeing. This is why people should be careful with tiny matches and big conclusions. A small match may be a clue. It should not automatically become a full story. DNA genealogy can do some things very well. It can be confirmed that a paper trail is probably correct when the match network supports it. It can reveal unknown close relatives. It can help adoptees and others with unknown parentage. It can uncover cases where the legal or social parent was not the biological parent. It can connect cousin groups that point to a shared ancestral couple. It can support conclusions when records are missing, damaged, or hard to find. It can also challenge family stories that were never quite right. A family may have repeated the same claim for generations, only for DNA to show that the line went another direction. A surname line may turn out to have a biological break. A group of shared matches may point to a family no one ever mentioned. That is part of why DNA testing has changed genealogy so deeply. It does not just add another source, it can force a fresh look at old assumptions. Used well, DNA gives researchers a powerful extra layer of evidence. DNA testing also has real limits. It cannot replace traditional genealogy records. It cannot explain every family event that caused a DNA pattern. It cannot automatically place every match into the correct spot in your tree. It cannot create relatives in a database that are not there. It cannot usually identify every ancestor across every line going back through the centuries. It also cannot make ethnicity estimates do more than they were designed to do. Those estimates can be interesting and sometimes helpful, but they are still estimates built from reference populations and modeling. They can shift when companies update their methods. They should not be treated like a final documented conclusion about one particular ancestor. This is where disappointment often comes in. People expect certainty where the test was only offering probability. They expect a full history where the test was really offering connections. They expect a finished answer, whereas the test was really giving them a starting point. Once people understand the limits, they usually use the results much better. The clearest way to think about DNA genealogy is this: it is a matching system built from shared DNA among living testers, interpreted through statistics, and made useful through family history research. That view cuts through a lot of false expectations. It keeps people from treating DNA like a crystal ball. It also keeps them from dismissing it as a gimmick. DNA testing is not either one. It is a real and powerful tool, but like any tool, it works best when you understand what it was designed to do. If someone expects DNA to replace research, they will likely be disappointed. If someone understands that DNA helps identify genetic relatives and build evidence for relationship work, they are far more likely to use it well. That is the right balance. DNA is powerful, but it works best when paired with records, family trees, historical context, and careful judgment. Here's my final thoughts. So, how reliable is DNA genealogy? It's very reliable for some tasks, especially with close relationships and strong match networks. It becomes less exact as relationships grow more distant, shared amounts get smaller, and the database gets thinner. It does not work as a standalone history of your whole family. It works as a biological comparison tool that becomes most useful when paired with traditional genealogy research. That is really the heart of it. DNA genealogy does not replace genealogy, it extends it. Once people understand that, they usually start asking better questions. Not, can this tell me everything, but what is this result showing me? Who are these matches? And how can I use this along with records to move one step closer to the truth? That is where DNA testing becomes most useful. It stops being a mystery box and starts becoming a research tool. If you've got a hard-to-find ancestor you're stuck on, I'd love to hear about it. Just head over to ancestralfindings.com and click on Contact to send me a message. While you're there, take advantage of our free weekly genealogy lookups, explore thousands of articles, and enjoy hundreds of podcast episodes. We've been helping family history researchers since 1995. And if you're looking for even more, check out our Genealogy Gold Q&A series over on Patreon. Thanks for listening, and as always, happy searching.